Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be, doing a deep dive into something that I think is pretty amazing. It's, those the amazing ways that pets can really help improve the lives of adults on the autism
Oh,
spectrum.
yeah.
And we're going to be, we're looking at this blog post from Cheap ABA. It's called "The Role of Pets: How Animals Can Benefit Adults with Autism."
Awesome.
Yeah. So get ready. I think you're going to learn a lot because, it goes way beyond just like having a furry friend to hang out with, right?
Right, right. Yeah. When we talk about the role of pets for autistic adults, I think a good place to start
Yeah.
is the way they address social isolation.
Oh, interesting. So we're starting off with, okay, we've got this challenge and maybe pets can be a solution.
Yeah.
So, yeah, tell me more about that. I'm interested.
Um, they provide these built-in social opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
Like, think about if you're in the park with your dog and someone else comes up and, they ask about your dog, maybe they smile at you.
Right.
Suddenly you're having a conversation. You have this shared interest and there's your entry point, right?
Yeah, that's so true. Like even for me, I feel so much more comfortable, approaching someone if they have a dog.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the dog is like giving me permission to say hello.
Exactly. And for autistic individuals who, sometimes have a more difficult time initiating social interaction, the pet can just be a total game changer.
I can see that.
Yeah. There's this example in a blog post, a man named David who had social anxiety and, he got a dog.
Yeah.
And then he ended up joining a dog training class
Hmm.
and he made friends, like real friends
Oh, wow.
with other dog owners.
So it wasn't just like small talk at the park, but it was, sparked this shared interest and then like actually led to a deeper connection.
Exactly. Exactly.
That's-
And there's actual science behind this.
Oh, tell me.
Yeah, so interacting with pets releases oxytocin, which is a hormone that's really connected to social bonding and trust. And this can be really powerful for people on the spectrum because those feelings might be sometimes a little bit harder to access in human interactions.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So pets are like little oxytocin factories, basically.
Yeah, yeah. Spreading good vibes, right?
Yeah, I like that. But isn't a pet also like, I don't know, another thing to worry about? It's a responsibility, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's a really good point. But, the structure and the routine of caring for a pet can actually be a really, really good thing for autistic individuals. A lot of them thrive on predictability,
I can see that.
Yeah, and the daily tasks like feeding, walking, grooming, it creates a kind of rhythm, right, to their day
Uh-huh.
that can be really, really grounding.
It's like a ritual almost, like a soothing ritual.
Yeah, exactly. The blog post actually even says that the responsibility of having a pet can actually be empowering.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it gives people, a sense of purpose, a feeling that they're needed. And that can do so much for self-esteem.
I can see that. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so we've talked about social connection, routine.
Right.
What about the sensory?
Sensory, yeah.
Like I know a lot of people just love to pet animals. It's just comforting,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But sensory experiences, it can be really tricky for folks on the spectrum. So how does
Mm.
that work?
It's true. It's true. And that's why choosing the right pet is really crucial.
Mm.
It's not just about cuteness or fluckiness, right?
Yeah.
You have to think about the textures, the sounds, the smells even.
Mm-hmm.
For some people, that soft fur of a cat is really calming, but for others, it could be irritating.
Right.
Yeah. That rhythmic purring sound of a cat, that can be super soothing for some, but others, they might be really sensitive to those high-pitched meows.
So it's really about finding a sensory match, right?
Yeah,
Like that works for the individual.
exactly.
So maybe, I don't know, like a reptile for someone who doesn't, like maybe too much noise or fur, but likes, visual stimulation and maybe a calmer energy.
Yeah, yeah. That's a great example.
Yeah.
And speaking of sensory experiences, we should talk about stimming.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
This is something a lot of autistic people do to kind of, regulate their sensory input. Things like rocking or flapping their hands or repetitive movements.
Right. Right. Yeah. I've heard of that.
And interacting with pets can actually be a really healthy outlet for stimming.
Oh, tell me more about that.
Yeah, yeah. So like, petting a dog or a cat, that rhythmic motion, or even just the predictable movement of a fish in a tank.
Mm.
These can be really calming and help with sensory regulation.
That is fascinating.
Yeah.
I never really thought about, like petting and stimming being connected, but now that you say it, it makes so much sense.
Yeah.
And it really shows how important it is to like really think about what that person needs when they're choosing a pet, the individual needs. Yeah. And there's so much more to this, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There's so much more to explore.
Okay.
Did you know that the blog post talks about a connection between owning a pet and physical activity?
Oh, okay. I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
Tell me more. Okay. So we're back and we're going to be talking more about pets and autism. And before the break, we were talking about the connection between having a pet and like physical activity.
Oh, right. Yeah. So for a lot of autistic adults, getting enough exercise can be a real struggle,
Right.
especially, if motivation's a challenge or they have social anxiety, like about group activities and stuff.
Right.
But having a pet can be the best way to get moving.
Yeah. I mean, I know for me, I'm way more likely to like actually take my dog for a walk, get those steps in
Mm-hmm.
when she's like staring at me with those puppy dog eyes.
Exactly. Exactly. And it doesn't even have to be just walks, right? You could play fetch, take a dog to agility class.
Right.
Even just running around the house with a playful kitten, it all adds up.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
The blog post even says that some adults on the spectrum who like never wanted to exercise, they found themselves being way more active after they got a pet.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
So, like, it's not just about physical health, but also, like, finding something you actually enjoy doing, right?
Exactly.
That motivates you. It's like your pet's your personal trainer.
Yeah. Your cheerleader and your trainer all in one.
Exactly.
Right.
So, okay, we've talked about,
Yeah.
picking the right pet for your sensory needs.
Right.
But there's another thing to think about, right?
Yeah.
Like, how much responsibility can you handle?
Yeah, absolutely. Having a pet's a big commitment. It's not just a fun thing.
Yeah.
For some autistic adults, those everyday tasks, the feeding, cleaning, grooming, it can be too much, especially if they're already dealing with sensory overload or executive functioning issues.
That makes sense. So how do you figure that out? How do you know if you can handle it or not?
Well, it's about being honest with yourself and, knowing when to ask for help.
Right. The blog post says maybe you could start with a lower maintenance pet, like a fish or a little reptile, just to see what it's like.
Yeah.
Get a feel for it.
Like a little trial run.
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
Exactly. And don't forget, there's a lot of resources out there, too. Some places have organizations that can actually help with pet care
Oh, wow.
for people with disabilities.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, so that can take some of the pressure off.
That's really good to know. Yeah, because it does. It takes a village sometimes, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've covered a lot, haven't we? Social benefits, routine, sensory stuff,
Yeah.
physical activity, responsible pet ownership.
We've covered a lot.
Is there anything else? Is there anything we've missed?
Well, there's one thing we haven't really talked about much.
Okay.
Animal-assisted therapy, or AT.
Oh, yeah.
Mm.
I've heard a lot about that, like how therapy animals can really help people with autism,
Yeah,
but I don't really know how it works. Can you tell me a little bit more about it?
sure. So AAT uses trained animals, a lot of times dogs or horses, as part of therapy.
Okay.
And these animals are really amazing. They can sense what people are feeling. They have a really calming presence
Uh-huh.
that helps people feel safe, especially when they're in, like, a therapy session,
Mm-hmm.
which can be kind of tough.
Right. I can see that being helpful. Like if someone is maybe a little intimidated by regular talk therapy, maybe this could be a good alternative or,
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. And AT can be used with lots of different kinds of therapy. Like, a kid who's working on speech therapy could practice reading out loud to a dog.
Oh, wow.
Or someone who's doing occupational therapy, they could work on those fine motor skills by brushing a horse's mane.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So it's not just like emotional support, but it's like using the animal to actually like learn and grow.
Exactly. And the blog post talks about something really important about AD.
Okay.
It's not just about the animal. It's about the bond between the person and the therapist.
That makes sense. So it's all about trust and connection.
Right. Just like any other therapy. And animals are incredible because they just seem to get us,
Yeah.
especially people on the spectrum.
Yeah.
They don't judge. They're not demanding. They just give unconditional love.
That's amazing. I'm really starting to see how powerful that connection can be, like, especially for someone with autism.
Absolutely. And, we've been talking about all the amazing benefits, but it's really important to remember that autism's a spectrum. Or-
You're so right. Yeah.
So what works for one person might not work for another. How can we make sure we're thinking about each person's individual needs and preferences?
That's a great question. Yeah. So we're back, and I'm excited to talk about, like, how can we make sure we're doing this right? Like, helping people on the spectrum find the best pet. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It's so important to understand there's no like, one perfect pet for everyone
Right.
because just like people, animals have different
Yeah.
personalities, right?
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, even within the same breed of dog,
Right, exactly.
you'd have one that's super cuddly and another one that's like, don't touch me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why the person with autism needs to be a part of the decision.
Yeah.
You have to think about sensory preferences, energy levels, how comfortable are they with social stuff, how much responsibility can they handle.
So it's like pet matchmaking.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great way to put it. It's pet matchmaking.
Right. It's like you've got to find the right, like, harmony between the person and the animal.
Exactly. And we should remember, too, it doesn't have to be a dog or a cat. You know,
Right. Right.
there's so many other animals out there.
Yeah, we've talked about reptiles, fish. I mean, even horses with a therapy thing.
Exactly.
What are some other, like, good options, for someone on the spectrum?
Well, small mammals can be really great, like rabbits or guinea pigs.
Hmm.
They're, cuddly, but they're not as big and loud as a dog or a cat.
Right, right.
Birds can be cool, too, especially for people who, like visual and auditory stuff.
Oh, yeah, like bright colors and pretty songs.
Exactly. And, sometimes the perfect pet is not what you'd expect at all.
Oh, really?
The blog post talks about this, a young woman with autism who had a pet snake.
Oh, wow.
She really loved taking care of it.
That's cool.
And, having that routine of like feeding it, cleaning its terrarium, it really helped her manage anxiety.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And I think it just shows that, you shouldn't rule anything out. When it comes to animals, like you never know what's going to click.
Yeah. It's about that individual connection. Right. You said it earlier, like matchmaking.
Exactly. Exactly. And, going back to what we talked about before, pets can give people such a sense of purpose,
Yeah.
especially for autistic adults who might have a hard time with regular jobs. Like caring for a pet can be really fulfilling. It's
Yeah.
almost like a job.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It's a job, but it's a good job.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good job. And it helps people feel good about themselves,
Yeah.
more confident, more capable.
Makes sense.
The blog post mentions this study that found that autistic adults who had pets felt more independent.
That's so great. I mean, it's amazing, right? Pets are not just like companions.
Right.
They can be therapists, trainers, they can boost your confidence, even teachers in a way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. They teach us so much about empathy, about responsibility, and about, loving someone no matter what.
Oh, I love that. That's a lesson we can all learn from.
Yeah, for sure.
This has been such a great deep dive. Like, I feel like I've learned so much.
For you too. Me too.
And I really hope our listeners have too. I guess if I could sum it all up, it would be like, never underestimate the power of that connection between people and animals.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can really change lives in some amazing ways that you might not even expect.
So true. And if you want to learn more about this, definitely check out the Cheap ABA blog.
Yeah, good stuff on there.
Tons of resources and information on autism. Thanks for joining us, everyone. This was a really fun one. And until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, and keep those tails wagging.